ever since the last time it happened, but he says he doesn't even. Yeah, I know. I can't believe that guy. He's just so. Hello everyone. Uh, Today I'm here to talk to you about gossip, the uh, the development of gossip, why people think we started doing this, and why we continue to do it now. Uh, it's good to know that this word, the term, wasn't originally negative, right? It comes from God and sibs, as in siblings, members of your close peer group, not your actual brother and sister necessarily, but people who are like brothers and sisters to you, right? People you're close with, your siblings under God. So gossip was the kind of talk you had with those people, the close, intimate relationship allowed for close, more intimate talk, right? Things you wouldn't say to strangers, people that are distant from you. And gossip it has that denotation of being light talk, light in the metaphorical sense, right? Talk about people's whereabouts and their doings and their behavior, right? Not necessarily talk about politics and economics and things like that. And of course, gossip has the connotation of being negative, right? Of being saying bad things. You're not just talking about people's behavior and whereabouts and things they've been up to, but about talking about these things in a negative way. And or as the definition here from Bergvall and Remlinger, pejorative talk about an absent third party, right? You're saying bad things about someone behind their back. We're going to put the negative part aside for now, as you'll have seen if you've done some reading on this, perhaps some that I suggested, and just talk about gossip as really as phatic communication, social talk, talk for social purposes, without necessarily always having that negative element in it. But we will talk about that. According to Dunbar, he says, what is gossip? It's language that does this, right? Keeping track of other individuals in the social network, right? What's she up to? What's he up to? Haven't seen him lately. Advertising one's own advantages as a friend, ally, or mate. The kind of talk where you say good things about yourself. Now, this is not often done directly. You don't just say, I'm very clever, I'm very handsome, you should be my friend. But making jokes, which show that you're a funny person, saying things about people that are nice about them, which therefore makes you look like a nice person, right? Things like that then. Talking about personal problems, right? Getting advice, not when you talk to, a psychologist or a doctor if you're having some sort of mental or emotional or physical problem, but talking to friends about this, right? It signals a closeness that you're willing to talk to people about things that are often private, right? And finally, this last one is the one that has to do with the negative talk, policing free riders, right? Which we'll see more what that means on the next slide. But so Dunbar says this is gossip, right? Language that does these sort of things, right? Social talk in these four categories. He says, this is Dunbar, this is Robin Dunbar here. He's an evolutionary psychologist, right? And people like him seek to explain what psychologically, what do we do that comes from our evolutionary development over time, right? What is it that in the past we did, in our case, specifically to do with language, right? But they study everything, but we're talking specifically about language. What is it we did in the past that accounts for our behavior now? And Dunbar makes this claim that gossip, this is a strong claim, right? But I think over time you may become convinced of this, that gossip, remember, gossip not only in the negative sense, but those other sense, right? Becoming friends with people, advertising oneself as a good friend, and so on. Gossip is the core of human social relationships, indeed of society itself. Is that possible? Well, that's how we get to know people, right? To make humans social relationships. We get to know them often by talking to them. How do you get to know people? How do you get to know which people you like, which people you really like, which people you want to marry, your boyfriend, girlfriend, that sort of thing, right? You get to this through the gossip type talk, right? Phatic talk. Keep in your mind this time in this talk that when I say gossip, I'm using it in the way Dunbar, Remlinger, the other Foster, the others you may have read, the way they use it, right? Really to mean phatic talk, but sometimes with that emphasis on the negative. You get to know people through gossip and whom you can trust, right? That society is built on trust. You trust all the time. You give your money to the bank. You trust they'll take care of it. You hire someone to take care of your kids. You trust they'll do it right. You drive your car. You trust other people will stop at red lights so that you can proceed, right? Society is built on trust, and that we need others to do things in groups. Humans can't do everything on their own, right? You can't grow your own food and build your own house, and you can't do everything on your own. We have to work as a group, and that it's gossip at the core, that gossip is what allows us to start building these social relationships with each other and knowing whom to trust. And the policing of free riders part, free riders are the people who take a ride, who ride along without doing their share, without contributing to the group, without showing that they're trustworthy. We've got to police those people, keep an eye on them, watch for bad behavior, sanction their bad behavior if there is any. Because otherwise, they're taking, say we're all working together as a society, the people who are taking from society without giving back through their own labor, without contributing, those people are a drain on society without contributing to it, right? As an evolutionary psychologist, Dunbar gets at this by asking us to think about other primates, right? About the monkeys and the chimpanzees and the orangutans and so on, and looking at how some of their behavior is analogous or correlates with some of our behavior, right? You've probably seen monkeys doing this sort of thing as in the picture, the social grooming. Sometimes the monkeys are really grooming each other, right? Cleaning each other. They spend a lot of time cleaning each other, picking out fleas and eating them and dirt and so on. But what we're told is that sometimes the grooming is done even when the other monkey is clean, right? You take a monkey, clean it up, wash it up, it's all clean, blow dry the hair, it's all ready to go. And the other monkeys will still groom it. So they're not really cleaning it for dirt, but they're cleaning it for that social grooming, the fact that touching each other is a sign of closeness with the monkeys. It actually releases endorphins in their body as they feel good when they're touched, right? So it shows closeness through touch, a form of phatic communication, which we would normally do by talking, they do through touch, because of course they can't really talk, right? They have some sounds that correspond to things, but they're not the same as full speech, of course. The monkeys need to work together, right? They're reasonably small compared to some of their predators, right? The great cats, the lions and the tigers and so on, the crocodiles and alligators that prey on them, right? So a monkey alone is in trouble, but a monkey in a large group can react to defend itself from predators. They can, one monkey can be watching, the other one can be, while one eats or sleeps or what have you, and you don't have to worry about being snuck up on at night, and so on, right? So they need to be working in groups. But as the group becomes larger, they need more food, right? And more water and more space, right? For a larger group. So they have to learn to trust each other, the monkeys, to share, right? To believe that, okay, look, some of us monkeys are going to be watching for predators up at the trees while the others go and catch food or gather food. And that, you've got to trust the other monkeys, that if I do the watching while you do the gathering, you're going to share with me. So I'm not going to be watching so that you get food and then you eat it all and then I go hungry and I got nothing. And they do, in fact, share. But so how do they negotiate, right? Well, they do it through this social grooming. That's how they show each other that they're a trustworthy group. Troop, I believe, is the word for like a herd of cows, a troop of monkeys, I believe. And And this is important, right? Because if you look at something like an orangutan, if they come into conflict, orangutans are huge, right? I mean, much bigger than a human, and they're very strong. They can kill each other if they get into arguments. So they have to avoid these arguments, avoid fighting over food by doing that social grooming that reassures all the members that they are, in fact, a cohesive unit, right? So they do this social grooming, and people do the same, of course. Excuse me. People do touch children, of course. Here she's booping his nose, right? And babies stroke them, pat them, touch people that you're friendly with, right? Loved ones, kissing, and so on, right? So we do have that social grooming, humans, the touch part grooming, right? Like the primates. And we'll come back to humans, but let's return to the monkeys for a bit. The thing that the people who study primates have noticed is that as the group size increases, more time must be spent grooming, right? The monkeys have to go around in a rota, in a daily, touching the other monkeys, right? Go over, touch, hey, I know you, I know you, I know you. They really do have to spend time grooming all of the members of the group to show that interrelated bonding and signal of group membership. But of course, each additional monkey means you have to spend more time grooming. You can't just sort of do it when, hey, how you doing, how you doing, how you doing? They got to spend some time on it, right? But they also need to look for food and sleep and everything. So the people who study them have found that there is a limit on grooming time. They can only spend roughly 20% of their time on this social grooming because they do need to eat, they do need to sleep, they do need to find and gather food. If the group gets too big, you can't touch everyone anymore, you can't do the social grooming. Suddenly we have sections of monkeys that don't know each other, and so eventually the group will split. There could be conflict, and eventually the group will split into two separate troops. I'm not quite sure if the word troop, I wish I'd looked it up, but I think that's it. Anyway, so this leads to a primate group size of roughly 80. Once they get to be more than, this is rough, but once they get to be more than 80, the chance of it splitting into two groups goes way up because they can't spend that social grooming time anymore. Human group size is higher, right? Robin Dunbar is known for this Dunbar number that he came up with based on studies of human groups in real space and on the internet through keeping track of people's use of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and so on. He's able to come up with a number that the average person knows. And by know here, he doesn't just mean sort of their name and a few details about them, that you keep in semi-regular contact with, right? And this number is found to stay roughly consistent. Think of those people that you used to know, maybe in primary school, and now you don't know them. I mean, you still know their name, but you don't know what they're up to anymore. You don't know what job she has. You don't know if he's got any kids. You haven't spoken to them in a few years. And we even you say, what happened to so-and-so? I thought he was your friend. Yeah, we lost touch. We even use that metaphor of touch. I don't keep in contact with her anymore, right? You don't have that physical connection. And of course, you probably mean this metaphorically, that you've lost touch talking, or you've lost contact in terms of talking, but it has that echo of physical touch, right? How many people, right? How many people do you think you know? Or rather, what is the Dunbar number? If primates are 180, Dunbar's number that he came up with is roughly 150 people, right? And as you take on new members in your group, you come to uni, you get a new job, and you meet new people, and you become a regular social acquaintance of those people. You just don't have time to keep track of everyone, and so you lose touch with other people, right? It's not that you don't like them, you just stopped having time to keep in touch with them, right? And so we seem to maintain roughly 150 members in our groups. Now, why is the human group number higher than the monkey's group number, right? Almost double. Doesn't take long to figure it out, right? Humans can touch, as we saw with the nose boops and so on, but we can do more, right? Because we can use language, right? We can maintain conversations amongst more than one person. We can do the linguistic social grooming more than just one-on-one, right? You can have 2, 3, 4, 5 people in a group and maybe more, and keep in touch with each other that way. We can, be cooking dinner while we chat, right? We can be studying while we chat, a bit of focus on the task, but also a bit of focus on the social. So we can do other things at the same time. Monkeys can't do the social grooming while they're doing the food gathering or whatever, right? And of course, like this gentleman is doing, we can have conversation at a distance, right? We can keep in touch with people over the telephone. And so we can maintain larger groups because it's just easier for us. So we can have multi-party conversations, do other things, and maintain contact at a distance. We seem to, like the monkeys, spend roughly 20% of our time in social interaction, which most of that is conversation, right? You do have social interaction other than conversation. If you like to play tennis with your friends, that's social interaction, right? I mean, if you're a professional tennis player, that's not social interaction. But if your hobbies are social interaction, and you may talk at the same time or you may not, right? But a lot of our social interaction is just talk. Put aside the rest of the time in which you're by yourself or you're not talking or you're asleep, or right? 20% of time, roughly, social interaction. And we know that we don't really care what people say in the social interaction, right? That's not the important thing. What's important is just the fact that you're doing it, right? Your time is valuable. You could be doing anything. If you spend some of that time choosing to talk to me, I take that as a sign that you like me, right? I mean, I'm not talking about one-off, sometimes you can't get out of it, but if you choose to semi-regularly or regularly talk to someone when you could be doing anything else, it's a strong signal of group membership, right? And therefore we can see it as social grooming, right? I could be talking to her, I could be talking to her, I could be talking to him, I'm talking to you instead. That means something to us. We don't care what the talk is about, right? People say all the time things like, oh yeah, we had a great time. We were talking about all kinds of things. Don't care what, it's just all kinds of things. Just the fact that we were talking, right? Or even more interesting, I love when people say, we had a great talk. And I say, what'd you talk about? Oh, nothing, right? Like the content clearly doesn't matter in an interaction like that. It's just the fact that you were doing it when you could have been doing anything else. Language, of course, does allow for exchange of content. And because of the importance and the more obvious relevance of content-related talk, right? Talking about doing stuff, talking about getting things done, doing our work, which gets us money, right? Teaching about medicine, which allows the new doctor to save your life. Because that kind of talk, that kind of language use is more immediately obvious, people tend to think that that's the more important kind of talk, that instrumental talk, that referential talk for teaching, right? Instrumental talk for getting things done. People tend to think that that's more important, but it's probably just because they see it happening more obviously. But Dunbar and others like him, well, as you saw, Dunbar argues that the social talk is more important, but because without knowing whom to trust through the grooming talk, we don't know who we should talk to about the instrumental talk and the referential talk, right? We need to trust people before we get around to talking about we need to trust them through content light or content free talk before we trust them with content added talk, with talk that has meaning in terms of getting things done. Monkeys only know what they see, right? They can't know the future or the past well, right? They live now, right? Humans can know what's going on and that we can remember the past more easily, we can project to the future more easily, and we can also project ourselves out to know that things happen when we're not around, right? We know that things happen when we're not around, and we know, and we want to know that. We like to know what's going on even when we weren't there, because knowing that allows us to continue to make judgments about whom to trust and whom not to trust, even when they aren't around, right? If we know their behavior accords with what they do when they're with us, if we know they do the same thing when they're not with us, then we feel like we're getting their real picture of that person when they are with us. And so we talk about people who aren't near us. We talk about things that didn't happen when we were around, we talk about things that happened when we weren't around to allow us to have that extension of our social network to know more about what's going on when we weren't there, which the monkeys can't do, right? So to summarize for now, we're not done, but to summarize, I'd like to just, I know I'm saying a lot here, right? And I want to make sure it's clear, right? So bonding. Humans can bond in larger groups than primates, larger groups than touch would allow, and we can use gossip to exchange that otherwise hidden information. The language for instrumental purposes, as I already said, is thought of as more important, which leads to people who don't think about it deeply thinking that gossip is unproductive, right? Wasted time. Don't gossip. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I don't know if I assume you know that expression. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. Dunbar would say, and the others would say, sometimes we need to say things that aren't nice in order to know whom not to trust. So you're talking a lot. You're got your social talk, right? Some 65% of the social talk is gossip, right? The more the categories focused, as we said earlier, advertising one's advantages as an ally, keeping track of individuals and so on, right? And then, I reminded of them here. A very small amount of that, as we'll see, only some 5%, is actually what would be categorized as the problem of free riders, right? So 20% of your time talk, 65% of that gossip, social talk, 5% of that policing free riders. And how do people do this? Well, how do we know this? People just make recordings and of people talking and categorize the different types of talk. What are they talking about here? They're talking about keeping track of others in the network, right? Where has she been lately? I haven't seen her, and that sort of thing. The actual policing free riders, right? Saying stuff about people who seem to be not contributing to the group, people who are taking without giving, is a very small amount, 5%, roughly. But because that's so important, it even though it's a small in terms of percentage, we see it as great in terms of importance because we want to know about people who aren't trustworthy, especially if they're hidden from us, as we saw a couple slides back, right? This guy was the picture I chose of a free rider, right? If you picture in the past, it's easier to see this, right? Imagine, because this is evolutionary psychology. Picture in the past we're a small group of people in a village, a rural village. Some of us some of us cut wood so we can have fires to be warm. Some of us tend the small farms so we have food. Some of us gather water. Some of us build the houses. Some of us, like this guy's supposed to be doing, watch for predators so our sheep don't get eaten, or watch for bandits so our sheep don't get stolen, right? If he's having to sleep behind the haystack here, he's a free rider. He's not doing his share, right? We could all lose because of his lack of effort. And so people like this are very important to be aware of, obviously, especially in the past when we didn't have a legal system to protect us, right? Now we have the law can protect us sometimes from what in the past had to be done informally through the group. Now sometimes legal sanction can happen, right? But it still doesn't feel right, even if it's even some things that are not against the law don't feel right to us, right? Hearing that someone you thought was a friend has made fun of you isn't against the law. It's not against the law for them to make fun of you, but it just doesn't feel right. It makes us feel hurt, sad, right? And so we still worry about those people, even though we may not need them to defend our sheep from the wolves anymore. This guy's not doing his share. We got to watch out for him, right? Very small amount of our talk is spent, not 5% remember, this is not 5% of all of your time, 5% of 65% of 20, to give some rough numbers. A very small amount of your time is spent actually policing free riders. I lent him money, he didn't pay it back, right? He's been talking nasty about you behind when you're not around, right? That sort of thing, right? He acts like he's good, but I heard him making some jokes about people, gay people, black people, people of a various religion, right? Making fun of Asians, whatever. He acts like he's a good guy, but you wouldn't like to hear what he does when you're not around, right? So we do these things. It's not the same as the watching out for bandits and what have you, but we are still policing free riders when we do this kind of thing, right? Because it's so important to us as a society, we make it more salient, small in percent, big in importance, right? It is the case, probably, that avoiding the dialect, especially accent, came as a form of the accent developed as a warning system, right? Your village is here, my village is here. It's useful that we both speak the same language, right? We all speak English so we can trade. You grow corn, we grow sheep. It's useful to be able to trade. But it's also useful, again, especially in the past where there was no legal system to protect us. If you sold us dodgy corn, or if we said we'd sell you sheep and then we didn't give them to you after you gave us the money, right? Now we have the legal system. In the past, it was useful to have some warning systems to tell us you're not one of us. And that's probably where different dialects came from. Dialect, and especially, no, I should say accent, really. If you're from the next village over, it's nice I can speak English to you so we can trade. But it's also good that you sound a bit different. So I know you're not from around here, right? People in my village, if I know them, or even if I don't know them, if they sound the same as me, well, I don't know you, but you sound like me, so you're probably from around here. Maybe I know your uncle, maybe I know your cousin. You can't betray me because I'll find you. People from the next village down, I don't know anything about them. Well, so that immediate warning system, be careful, maybe a good person, but the accent means not from around here, is probably the development of different phonological variation, right? Different accents. But we can have free riders from within our group, right? People who sound like us can also be free riders. So we need to identify, right? It's him, describe their negative behavior. This is what he did, and offer possible sanctions, right? What are we going to do because of that, right? Don't lend him money anymore. He won't pay you back, right? Let's not invite her to lunch. All she does is, talk about our other friends that aren't around, what have you, things like that. This can be tested, right? People like Orstrom and others here. This has been done many times in different ways, but this one I think is particularly easy to picture, right? They do an experiment, an economic game experiment, right? They invite people to come and take part in an experiment, and they tell everyone, look, here's £5 or some money, whatever, let's say £5. Here's £5. You can leave now with your £5 and that's the end. You get to keep your £5. Thank you for coming. Or secretly, you can all 10 of you can put your £5 in this bucket. Now, if everyone puts their £5 in the bucket, secretly, you don't know if the others did it, you're not allowed to talk about it. If everyone puts their money in the bucket, you will each get £50. So you have a chance to make a lot more money. Go home with 5 or risk it to win 50. And what happens is most of the people don't put their money in the bucket. They'd rather just take their £5 and go. Then the experiment is changed, and the same thing happens, except the people are given 5 minutes to chat. They're told you can't talk about the game, but go have a coffee, have a biscuit. And so people go and, oh, did you come far? Yeah. Oh, this is a bit weird, isn't it? Yeah, but don't talk about the game. All right, sorry. Yeah. What do you do? Oh, I'm a nurse. Oh, I'm a nurse too, or my grandmother was a nurse, whatever. They just chat about friendly stuff like that. After that, what happens is the number of people who put their money in the bucket goes up, way up, in fact. Still not everyone usually puts it in, but the people suddenly become a lot more trusting, right? Just giving them that bit of time to chat, to see a bunch of strangers suddenly as having some commonalities, right? You don't have much time, but at the very least, the people, oh, she says please and thank you, right? That's the way I was raised. She's somewhat like me, right? Gives us time to familiarize ourselves with one another a bit, and the trust goes up. That's what these kind of experiments show, right? That giving people the chance to talk makes people trust each other a bit more, right? It reduces the selfish behavior of taking your £5 and going, right? It doesn't eliminate it, but it reduces it. And that's a quite consistent finding across experiments like this. Uh, we can understand each other's behavior and thoughts. We can project ourselves into other people, right? We know that even if someone does something nasty to her, I'm not her. It doesn't hurt me directly, but I know that if it was done to me, it would hurt me in the same way that I know it is hurting her. So I want to project myself into her head and think, well, she'd want to know about this. She doesn't know what he said. She doesn't know what she did, but she would like to, because then she'd know she could avoid him, right? So we can project ourselves into their point of view and then tell them, right? You know what he said when you weren't around, right? You know what she did, you might want to watch out for her, that sort of thing, right? We can understand that the free ride that person is taking may not affect me directly, but she'd want to know. And then, of course, it reinforces my bond with her, right? We get the trust between each other of having warned away from that person who's hurting you now, not hurting me now, but the behavior he exhibits now might hurt me in the future because he might do the same to me at some other time. So the policing of free riders not only pushes away those who might be trying to hurt the group, but also reinforces the strength of the group, right? Get rid of the weak link, reinforce the strength of the group. Eliminates the threat to them, her that I'm talking about, and to me, myself. What's going on now, right? So Dunbar talks more about gossip as an evolutionary process that still affects the way we see it and our behavior linguistically now. Foster talks more about what's going on now with gossip. We know that gossip is seen as a bad thing, right? As I said earlier, and as we see here, from times long past, right? Be not a talebearer. Whoever repeats gossip lacks understanding, right? Books from the early part of the Christian Bible, well back, right? It's got that negative nuance, has always been there. And yet we still keep doing it, right? Which is probably something to do with that feeling that, well, gossip is always bad, but Dunbar is trying to convince you that only a small amount of it has that negative nuance of policing free riders, and that a lot of it is to do with trust building. Foster says, put aside the idea that men don't gossip, right? The words may be different, bants, pub talk, the words may be different, it's the same thing, right? Gossip is pub talk, right? It's just that it tends to be that if women do it, we say it's gossip. If men do it, we say it's banter, something like that, right? For linguists, it's the same, right? So we're not talking about gossip as a woman's thing, right? Although interestingly, it was very difficult, I don't know, very difficult, but to find pictures that aren't just of women gossiping. If I use clip art in Microsoft, right, it's women or it's women with men, or all women, mostly women, girls, right? Gossip is gender marked as a female thing, but for linguists, it's not, right? Men do it, right? Gossip is situational, as it says here, right? You have to have the right situation to discuss gossip, right? If you came to my office or if you booked an online consultation with me and I started talking about someone's academic performance, hey, your friend, she's really not doing so well. You would think I was a terrible lecturer and a terrible person, right? The situation that exists between you and me as lecturer and student does not allow for that type of exchange, right? Which is different than, of course, a parent talking about a child's performance in school, right? And similarly for talking to the doctor or talking to other people about medical conditions is a different situation, right? Licensed conditions, as it says here, an old definition from Abrams, cited in Foster, but I think it's really a good term for it. It's as if you get a license, like you're permitted to drive a car because you have a license. It's like eventually you get a license to gossip, right? You meet new people, and at first things are somewhat distant, but then eventually the barrier is broken, and you start talking more about gossipy things. Oh, you've got kids, so do I. How old are your kids, right? You move from talking about work only to sometimes talking about maintaining track of others in the network, right? I'm interested in you, so therefore I'd like to hear about your kids, right? The licensing, it reminds me sort of it's, I think this applies to swearing as well, right? Most of us probably don't meet someone and immediately start swearing. But, sometimes I've known someone for a while, and then once suddenly they'll say something, I've had a really shitty day. And I'll be, so we've broken the barrier. We're swearing now. Are we good? Okay. Not that I'm dying to swear, but I think you can see what I mean, right? It's like the swearing barrier is broken, and the gossip barrier can be broken in the same way. Gossip says, Foster writes it this way: gossip, in a context of congeniality, right, friendliness, gossip is the exchange of personal information, which may be positive or may be negative, about absent third parties. So Foster's using a definition that's more like the one that we're familiar with probably when we hear people talk about gossip, but notice it does still say positive as possible. Still not saying that gossip is always a bad thing, right? But it's that talking about personal issues in an evaluative way. She did this and that's good. She did that and that's terrible. Foster, like Dunbar, Foster breaks gossip into 4 types. Different names, some of them are the same meaning as what Dunbar said, not always though. By the way, these categorical answers that people give you when they give you like 4 types, it's not always that 4 is the best or 3 or 6 or whatever. It's that number is memorable, right? 4 types of politeness, Grice's 4 maxims. You may wonder why in linguistics there's often 4 of something. If these people broke it into 10 types, 20 types, we couldn't remember them. It's too much. If they only give you 1 or 2 types, it's not enough distinction, right? Sometimes these 4 here is a function of, well, we've got different types of gossip: information, entertainment, friendship, influence. We've got different types, and 4 is memorable. You can probably hold that in your head. So just keep that in mind, right, when talking about these categorical answers. Sometimes it's just a matter of the human brain being good at remembering sort of 4 to 7 numbers, 4 to 7 things, right? Anyway, these I'll go through them more quickly because they're really just, for the most part, repeats of what Dunbar said, right? For information is really what Dunbar said for keeping track of other individuals in the network, right? What's going on? Although sometimes it's that what's going on, learning it informally, right? Like newspaper and television reporters want to get the inside scoop. They don't want to talk to, if you want to become a reporter, don't be satisfied just talking to the company or to the company's public relations people, right? They'll have written the most bland, inoffensive explanation for what's going on. You want to talk to insiders who will give you the real information, right? Keeping track. That's like Dunbar's keeping track, right? For entertainment, this is the one where Dunbar and Foster really differ, right? It just seems like people like to gossip. They just like to talk about others in that social way when it doesn't really serve any benefit other than to be friendly and fun, right? This probably accounts for the prevalence of, gossip websites, gossip television programs, gossip magazines, right? Where celebrity magazines, what did she do? What did he do? What do we think of them? We don't know them. We're never going to meet them, right? So they're not really in our network, but they do entertain us to talk about them, right? That connects to the idea of influence that we'll come to in a minute, but stick with friendship for a sec, which really goes along with some of the things Dunbar said about trust building, right? The fact that you're willing to talk about issues that may be more close to you, right? Issues of personal health and getting advice and so on, issues about how you feel, right? Your emotional and mental responses to things. We typically only do this with people that we feel close to. So doing such signals a building up of that friendship, of that closeness, or a maintenance of that friendship and closeness. That's what I said about, even using celebrities to gossip about in a safe way. We can talk about what the celebrities are doing without worrying that it'll ever get back to them, right? Sean, don't say that about Kim Kardashian. She might find out, you said that her 40th birthday party wasn't so hot. She's not going to find out, and even if she does, she's not going to care, right? So we can do it safely. Influence, right? This is the one that is really Dunbar's policing free riders, right? We talk about, even when we do talk about celebrities we don't know, we may be providing some sort of influence to one another in terms of, if we say this thing about her, she's a bad person because she did this. Did you hear what he did, the way he treated his wife? It's terrible. It's not too hard to realize, well, look, if we are both talking about him and saying that his behavior is bad, even though we will never meet him, we also realize implicitly, oh, wait, if I do what he did, you won't like me either. We've agreed that what he did is not right. If I do it, you're not going to like me either. So we influence each other about those those things that aren't necessarily illegal. It's no longer illegal to cheat on your spouse in the United Kingdom, right? But most of us don't think it's right. So talking about that sort of thing, even in reference to outsiders that we don't know, can influence our own behavior. Hey, I better not do that either, because then, she won't like me. As it says, Foster says, culture depends on the repetition of norms and mores. Mores and moral, right? Even those things that aren't illegal. Should you do this or not? We often learn that through informal, phatic, gossip type talk. So what we have here is two theories of gossip, right? Dunbar and Foster. Often they overlap in terms of their categories. Both of them are saying, here's a good system for describing gossip. Sometimes people say, Sean, which one's the better one? They're both saying that Dunbar and Foster are both each saying I have a good system for explaining what's going on in terms of how social language works. You can use one or you can use both, right? When you're describing language, you can say things like, here they seem to be talking in a way that Foster 2004 might call information, but Dunbar 2004 might call keeping track of other individuals in the network. You can use both if you want, or you can pick one or the other and just use it, right? These people are offering you a tool to describe human behavior, and they're saying, my tool is better, use mine. So that's the end of that, right? Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.